So that mountain behind me, I think it was October. So right up there, around that corner up top, well, not quite to the top, maybe 3/4 of the way up, there's a logging road. Switchback goes up, and some people made a cabin up there, and a lot of people go up there to jump off in their paragliding rigs. And last October, I believe it was, a couple went up there and they saw Sasquatch prints coming down right off the top, going diagonal down into that clear cut, coming this way, right there. And also, to give you a bird's eye view of up there, that is where I took this photograph of me standing on the stump. Actually, I was making videos up there, and that's basically right where I was standing, maybe within a couple hundred yards where that being came down off the top and was angling from my right in the photo down to go past an angle that way. Thought I'd give you that little tidbit. There's a lot of sightings in this valley right here. A friend of mine was jogging that way, about maybe a kilometer that way. There's a place called the Big Cedars around the corner there. And he was jogging through there and something was paralleling him in the forest, scaring the shit out of him. Doesn't know what it was. And this guy's seen a lot, believe me. He's very A-type. But anyway, just a couple of tidbits for what's behind me. There's a lot of moose behind me. There's mountain goats back in here. Grizzly bears, black bears, wolves, deer, wolverine. Yeah. Pitt Lake River, Northern Washington State, Mount Baker area. I don't care if you use my name. I'm not much of a typist, and I never went to college for an English degree. My father's side came from England to Canada in the 1800s. I was later told most of my family were born in the St. Mary's Hospital in New West, where my father later tore down that hospital with a wrecking ball. Irony. My grandfather joined the Canadian Navy, who in his words said they were scattered and mismanaged, so he came to the United States and joined the U.S. Navy, and his job is to transport troops from New York to England. He mentioned the trip over he had never seen so many men seasick in his life. Some have never seen the ocean. After the war, he purchased equipment and started clearing roads for the province for logging. My father, growing up, even had a pet black bear, which always laid in the equipment, and they had to wake my father up as a child to get him off the machinery. My grandfather talked about buying a 30-foot liveaboard and going up the Pitt River to the lake and seeing creatures standing in the water where a man could not stand over the water, would be over their head. Back in the 1970s, my parents had a Studebaker bus, and my father worked for a logging company in northern Washington State, and a creature one night came and rubbed the bus as a boulder was rubbing against it. In the morning, there were no tracks in the soft gravel sand. She mentioned that the smell was something she will never forget, and they were 40 miles from a paved road. This is not the first encounter. There's a lot of activity in one area I know about, just hard to get to now. In the 80s, a sheriff down here came to a man's house from a call, and a man was torn apart limb by limb as a grizzly did the damage, but here we only have black bears. He reported it was an animal who killed him, so we did not have the crazies come out and flood the area with stupidity. I live in the mountains on acreage, and I have never seen one, but I have placed Rubbermaid bins in various spots when camping that had my gear in it. Last summer, one was picked up and moved 100 feet on a ridge, and no chew marks, and all items were not tampered with. Ever since logging has happened in my area, a lot of animals are displaced, making a bottleneck for animals to move back into Canada. I do not know of an old road that is an access point. Thank you for what you do. As an old saying I was told not long ago, paranoia is a sign of heightened awareness. If you're ever down south, I'll buy you dinner. Robert Arthur Price. All right, Robert. Appreciate that, man, and I appreciate that offer. I hope I read that smooth. I think I'm snow blinded from my hike today, and the sun's absolutely bright. I'm getting it done. Those are very, very interesting mentions, and if you ever come across any more, we'd for certain want to hear back from you. If you got anything else you want to share, this is the place to do it, man. Oregon Bigfoot. Hi, Steve. My name's Randy. I found the site one day because of my own experiences with these beings. One incident that stands out is back in 2009 up in the Willamette National Forest. I belong to a gold prospecting club who has the mineral rights for the creek we were on. Mine and my wife's first camp out up there, I felt that something was on the hillside next to us, and the feeling was one of irritation, like all of us should not be there. We stayed and nothing negative happened. We've camped with many others at this site. Several years in a row, I always had the uneasy feeling that something was there looking down on us, but they always kept distance. A few years ago in the same place, set up my tent and went to bed. Later in that, I woke because something touched my head through the tent. I didn't sleep after that. Next morning, I asked some of the others who were close by if they came by my tent and brushed it, but no one did. I'll end it here, but I can tell you that some of my experiences with these beings are not all bad. Those are for another time. I love what you're doing, so please do not stop. All right, Randy. Don't be shy, man. You see how long it took me to read that? 2 minutes? Go ahead and share whatever you got, all right? Just send it this way. And I'll get out there and share it with the people, because there's a lot of people out there who want to hear it, including me, all right? Sabe. Good afternoon, sir. You can use my name due to the fact there's not a person on this earth that can intimidate or scare me in any way, shape, or form. The only man that ever put the fear of God in me was my father, who passed away in 2003. One big Lakota Cherokee Indian. Dad hated the title Native American for the simple fact it is an untrue title. His ancestors and mine have inhabited this land thousands of years before there ever was in America or Canada. My name is Brian Stidham. I now own the cabin along with 77 acres my parents purchased in 1966. The property is located in northern Lower Michigan, and my property line borders the Huron National Forest. I don't want to give the exact location due to the problem I had a few years ago with the brain-dead fraudulent research organization. I prosecuted them for trespassing on 6 occasions. Though I do appreciate the 7 trail cameras I located on my property and now reside in my possession. I grew up in southeast Lower Michigan, but spent many weekends and holidays and weekends up here in what we called Heaven's Backyard. Our nearest neighbor was 3 miles away as the crow flies, or a little over 5 miles by road. Mr. Ash, his proper name was John Ashoba, an elder of the Ojibwe and a member of the Chippewa Tribal Council. He was an absolute wealth of knowledge in the understanding and knowledge of the natural earth. Between Mr. Ash and my dad, I was taught how to live off the land and how it provides all we'll ever need. From the plants that are edible to the plants and trees with medicinal purposes. How to stalk and hunt while wearing blue jeans and a red plaid coat. I was taught the best camouflage when coming into contact with prey is to sit still and be quiet. The pounced, Mr. Ash's terminology to an 8-year-old. Also between the two men, I learned about every animal in the northern woods, their behavior, their smell, their vocalizations, and their hunting habits. Those animals were the large elk down to the hare-brained chipmunks that would evade our cabin at any chance they saw an opening. I was 5 years old when I learned to question everything. Independence Day weekend, July 6, 1975. After being at the cabin since the previous Thursday, along with my aunt, uncle, and cousin Dave, it was Sunday morning, and my dad told us to pack a bar of soap and a couple towels, and my dad, Uncle William, and cousin Dave, were going to go to river bathe and swim. Though it was near 80-plus degrees up here in July, the river was cool, almost bordering on cold. In later years, I would tell my friends of mine that would come up in the weekends with us, you jump into the river, a baritone, and come out a soprano. We had been in the river about an hour. We bathed, then we moved down the bank 25 yards where my dad created a swimming hole of rocks. It's approximately 7 feet long and the width of the river at the location, which is a little 14 feet wide. We jumped in and had a ball for about a half an hour when I became cold and swam to the bank on the opposite side of the bank from which we walked in from, the road, down to the river. The banks of the river are steep. It's a 13-foot climb down to the river's edge. The banks are a solid wall of foliage along with steep banks with the exception of the path my dad created to get down to the water's edge. As I stood on the opposite bank shivering and teeth chattering, I told my dad I was cold. Then from behind me came the sound that can be described as the same sound a tire would make if the steam was pulled out of the rim. On my way back, it felt like the hairdryer had been aimed toward me, but the warm air covered me from head to toe. I remember feeling, that feels good. I looked at my dad, uncle, and cousin who had stopped swimming and were staring at me. The look on my uncle and cousin's face was odd to me. Hell, I was only 5. My dad, on the other hand, was now at the river's edge with his right hand up and open, as though he was waving high, and left hand was open with his palm facing toward me. a posture he learned from Mr. Ash. That's when I turned around. I turned to see a reddish-brown, hair-covered, gray butt. It took 2.5 steps to get to the top of the bank, then knelt down as it turned toward me. It was an Indian in a fur coat. That's when my mind interrupted what I was seeing, though it had large black eyes and a wide grin on its face. I waved at it and it stood up and walked into the pines. My dad looked at me and said, "Come on, buddy, it's time to go." My uncle and cousin, as soon as it turned around, ran up the embankment straight to the car. They left their towels and bathing items there on the bank. My dad held me as we got across to the other side of the riverbank, put me down, and collected all the items my uncle and cousin left behind. He told me to go up to the car. The walk from the road to the river was 50 yards or so. When I made it to the car, my uncle and cousin were locked in the car. Dad had the keys. He had popped the trunk and threw all the items in and unlocked the car for us. I got in the back seat with Dave, and he still looked odd. He said, "What was that?" I was bewildered and said, "What?" This is when my uncle told my dad to get our asses back to the cabin now. I told Dave, "What, the hairy Indian?" My uncle turned and looked at me and raised a voice and said, "That was no Indian." I was truly confused. That's exactly what I'd seen, a big, hairy Indian. Then my dad said in a plain, matter-of-fact tone, "Nobody that wasn't an Indian, that was a Sabe," pronounced Sabe. My uncle said he didn't care what it was. He was heading home and never coming back to the cabin, and he never did. Uncle William packed up his van, and as soon as we got back to the cabin, told my aunt they were leaving, and they were leaving now. He didn't tell her what they'd seen, and he didn't tell her what they had seen until they were on the freeway headed home. Here's the hilarious part. My aunt laughed at him after he told her. Years before, I don't believe I was born, she had come up and seen 2 Sabe while picking blueberries. She knew about them. After they had left, Dad had a ham radio that he used to contact the folks in the area. He got a hold of Mr. Ash and asked him to come by. Mr. Ash was there in 10 minutes. He must have flown to get there. He was told what happened. That's when my dad said it wasn't an it was a female. Mr. Ash patted me on the head and said that I had been blessed. I had no idea that meant for a long time. My dad told Mr. Ash, "Tell him." Mr. Ash said, "Today you have met Sabe. They are people that live in the woodlands and swamps. They have been here longer than us. Sometimes they have been very good to us, and sometimes they can be very bad. They have what we lost in time. They have what we have lost to time, an instinct to understand all natural things." He then went on to say, the Sabe is part of the Chippewa, Ojibwe, 7 grandfathers' teachings. The Sabe represents honesty. Years later, I asked the question, "Why honesty?" Mr. Ash said plainly, "With the Sabe, you get what you get. There's no in between." I would also learn why I wasn't afraid that day by the river. Mr. Ash said, "The Sabe know your heart. They can sense your character." I later learned that meant they know our intentions. Forgive me if this is too long. My parents and my aunt and uncle are gone now, and I still talk to my cousin Dave, who now lives in upstate Washington. We have grown up knowing about these people ever since that weekend. Has it changed the way we think of the woods or the world as that goes? Sure. I can't understand why anyone would want to tempt fate to head into the woods to see, talk to, photograph, or as the mental midgets in the Oklahoma House of Representatives have announced, hunt these people. You can't hunt for someone that knows you're there. The woods and the swamps are their domain. There's nothing you can give them they can't obtain themselves. I have learned a lot about these people in more than 50 years on this earth, and I'll continue to learn about them. I tell everyone that is in sane state of mind when asked about these people, yes, I just happen to own land that belongs to them. For the most part, I've had a good understanding of them, and they have a good understanding of me. There's been a few times that have caused me to damn near shit myself, but honestly, it was from my doing and disrespect toward them. If you upset one, God have mercy on your soul, because they won't. We all have to get back to understanding that we understand nothing. There are no authorities or experts to help us. If you truly care and want to gain knowledge of these people with a very humble and honest heart, try speaking to your native elders in your part of the world. Though I will give you this word of warning, they will see through your wall of bullshit if you come to them in a pompous manner. They tell you to leave and not come back. I learned this lesson and have witnessed it while working on my master's degree in Native American Studies. I will leave you with this, and this pertains to you, Steve, when you had the experience of dread in the forest, watching you being bewildered and actively trying to find the source of the feeling. You stood there for 5 seconds longer than you should have. Get out of there and watch the timber as you leave. There are numerous stories from the tribes of how Sabe, Skookum, Oma, Sasquatch, etc. I absolutely abhor the name Bigfoot. That's not their name. They will bewilder their prey object and then from out of nowhere, ambush. Their speed is astonishing, and there's nothing you can do to get away. Please be safe, be careful, and never dismiss your gut feeling to leave. Take care, good sir, and I wish you all the best. My heart goes out to you over the loss of Mr. Macaroni. I grew up around horses up here, and my dad, being half Lakota, would tell an old Lakota saying, the true honest gift we are giving at birth is the earth, the sun, and a horse. If you're ever in northern lower Michigan, give me a call, unless you're headed to a psycho circus, aka Bigfoot convention. I want nothing to do with those mental midgets. All the best, Brian Stidham. Brian, I can't tell you how much I appreciate your sharing of knowledge. I so appreciate that, and we're definitely brothers without a doubt. You know what? Whatever knowledge you have, you want to share with the people, man, please do it. And please do it here, and don't ever think it's too long. All right? I could probably read from you for a day, without stopping for a break and not complain. All right? That was very interesting, to say the least. Not surprising. Yeah, I learned about my gut feelings a long time ago. I also learned on my own that these beings know exactly what's going on at all times, and I learned at an earlier age that I was absolutely convinced that these beings know who you are the second you step into the woods. And maybe that's probably why it's given me a little more confidence than normal, as I keep going up on myself, and I don't stop living my life to the fullest anyway, right? But to all you people who are self-proclaimed researchers or even self-proclaimed experts, I hope you listen to this man speak and take heed to his words, man. Knowledge is gold. That was a good one. That was a good chunk of knowledge shared. But yeah, if you can, Brian, share more, all right? Share more whenever you feel like it. And if I am ever in the neighborhood, you can be rest assured I will be getting a hold of you for certain. All right, what do we got? Follow-up. Hey Steve, the following is a series of events that have taken place since my daughter and her friend had their daylight sighting of one of those things about 4 years ago. They are not in order because some of them were not recognized for what they were at the time they occurred, causing us to estimate when they happened. They are spread over the past 3 to 4 years and continue down to today. As one of your viewers wrote, it seems that if you see one of these things, they tag you. Both women live over 20 miles from the sighting. Both live within a few miles of each other. Both live in residential areas with neighbors literally a stone's throw away. Both properties are bordered on one or more sides by woods. I'll start with my daughter's friend. Vocalizations and a tree pushed over. Number 1, trees pushed over. 2 healthy trees are pushed over on a property. Additionally, another one was uprooted and hung from another tree. The roots were suspended 3 feet off the ground. This is in an area her dogs refused to go into. One of the tree pushing incidents was particularly concerning. One day she was picking berries from a bush on the side of her driveway. Upon filling her bowl, she went into the house. Her husband, who was working on the other side of the house and out of sight, came and asked her when the tree fell over. Not knowing what he was talking about, she went outside. Sure enough, there was a tree pushed over and partially blocking the driveway. Her husband had to use his truck to move it. The troubling part is that the tree was pushed onto the berry bush right where she had been standing. That was a bit of a rock climb there, wasn't it? Number 2, vocalization. One night, one of her dogs, 3 American bulldogs, each over 120 pounds, wanted to go out. It was around 3 a.m. She opens the door and stepped out onto the deck. The dog refused to leave her and stood staring into the woods while growling. Then she heard what she described as a giant woman crying. As bad as that dog wanted to go out, he waited till morning. Number 3, handprints. One day, one of her dogs disappeared. She had a habit of taking off into the woods, but usually came back within an hour or so. This time she was gone much longer. When she finally returned, she was literally covered from nose to tail with thick mud. The mud covered her entire body except for 2 places, on either side of her chest, in the shape of 2 large hands. It was as if someone picked up the dog, dipped her in the mud, and then let her go. The mud covering every part of the dog except where the hands were. This is just the beginning. Things accelerate from here. Much more to come. Pat. Wow, Pat. That definitely sounds like a pile of stuff going on, without a doubt. And I sure am glad that dog didn't get torn in half. Not yet anyway, right? There seems to be a bit of a non-tolerance for canines with these beings a lot of times, right? Anyway, if there's more to come, we're ready for it. We want to hear it. So share away, man. Absolutely appreciate it. Don't be shy. This is the right place to share. I definitely hear something up in the timber right there. Whatever, could be snow melt, but I'm hearing something as I'm reading. I don't know if anybody heard that rock clank a second ago, but whatever, is what it is. I don't give a shit. Bring it. No time for being nervous. Hi, Steve. My journey with these beings began in the mid-'70s here in eastern Panhandle, West Virginia. My grandpa ran a trap line for foxes, raccoons, possum, skunk, mink, and muskrats. I was between the ages of 5 to 8 years old at the time. I tagged along with Pop and my uncle when they checked the traps daily. We butchered quite a few hogs every fall and used the lungs to trap the baits. We would find trail and hang a piece of the lungs over the trap that was placed underneath. We would then move farther down the trail and set another one. We set at least 8 to 10 down the trail to cover the length of it. We caught quite a few foxes, raccoons, and a possum over the next several weeks. One morning we were checking the traps and discovered the first one in line had been destroyed. A dual spring leg trap torn completely apart. Bait gone, trap destroyed. Pop put another trap down and rebaited and moved on to the next. We get there and the next one was all destroyed as well. Needless to say that we discovered all 4 or 5 were destroyed. My pap and I and my uncle had quite a discussion about what went on. I didn't hear what they were saying, but things became very serious very quickly. I also noticed that the next time we checked the traps, we had more than a .22 long rifle with us. I honestly don't believe that was a bobcat, and that's what I was told by Pop. I suppose to keep me calm. There are other instances on our farm, that adjacent community that I grew up in, that I'll share at a later time. God bless my friend, keep sharing the truth. It's so unfortunate the governments around the world continue to hide the truth from us all. Forums like yours will change all this. Brad Arvin. Brad, thanks for sending that in, man. And you get a chance next time, make sure you share as much as you can, all right? Because I miss a lot of emails, and it almost puts you in the back of the line, which could be months, but unfortunately. So you guys get a chance, send in your email, man, because we want to hear from you. We want to hear from every one of you. And another thing, too, is I'm going to make a note, is quite often people will send me an email, I'll crack it open, and they'll say, I just want to see if this is the right email to send something. And I see it, and I shuffle to the next email because I'm looking for people's experiences that are mailed in and need to be heard. And I don't have time to be replying to those emails. I just don't. Sometimes I do, and I say, yep, go ahead, let her up. And then I carry on, but usually I'm too busy. And I'm almost impatient in a way because I'm like, oh, you just blew it. Because you blew your chance of sharing what you had. So in the future, if any of you are listening, please don't email me and ask me if it's the correct place to send an experience, because that might be your only chance to get it read. Okay? Just, if you got something to share with me, type it out, email it. All right, just let her rip. If you wrote down the email correctly, you sent it to the right place. Okay? So anyway, thanks again for everybody that shared. And if you want to get it off your chest, share my story at howtohunt.com or tell my story at howtohunt.com. And it will get here, all right? It'll get here. So keep sharing it.